Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Glad you could be here. Today's going to be a little bit of a different video for my channel. This is my first author deep dive. And I think I'll probably do more of these in the future, especially if you tell me in the comments that you like stuff like this, then I will most definitely do more of these. But to kick it off, my first author deep dive is going to be about Neil Gaiman. He's one of my absolute favorite authors of all time, and I wanted to give you a window into his world. He's very well published in a lot of different arenas, a lot of different types of writing and literature and things like that. So grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you drink, kick back, and just enjoy this glimpse into the writings of Neil Gaiman. And just a little bit of a disclaimer, this won't be a necessarily exhaustive overview of his writings. There are some writings out there that I'm sure I'm not aware of, or have not read, or don't know enough about to really engage on them properly. So if there are some of those that you've read that I don't mention in this video, let me know in the comments other things that I should read. But I am pretty well read in Neil Gaiman. I've read most of his books, and I own some of his books as well that I have not read, and I'll tell you a little bit about those too. But I have been a huge fan of Neil Gaiman for a while now, and so much so that if there's an interview with Neil Gaiman on somebody's YouTube channel, or he's giving a speech that's been recorded, or he's going to be appearing live somewhere, there's a good chance I'm going to want to try and get tickets if he's in my area. So it's that kind of thing. I'm not obsessed per se, but I am a very true fanboy when it comes to Neil Gaiman. So without beating around the bush any longer, let's get right to it. I would be remiss if I did not introduce this author deep dive with the amazing The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This is my absolute favorite Neil Gaiman book. And in one of my previous videos, I talked about my wish list for books, and one of those was the illustrated edition of Ocean at the End of the Lane. And I finally got a hold of the illustrated edition. I am so excited. It's got some amazing, beautiful illustrations in it. I'm so excited to read the book again via the illustrated edition. But yes, this is a short book. It is very easy to read. It is one of his absolute best and unique stories. I can't recommend it enough. So I do have a video where I did a review of Ocean at the End of the Lane. And it was actually my first video for this channel. So if you want to get a good laugh, check out that video. I'll post a link to it at the end and in the description below. You can check out my review of it. Don't laugh too hard, please. It was my first video, but yeah, it is an excellent book. Highly recommend it. Neil Gaiman is probably most well known for The Sandman. The Sandman graphic novel series follows Morpheus, aka Dream, aka the Sandman. And he is the god who is in control of all the nocturnal goings-on in the minds of human beings. And so he controls people's dreams, sometimes their nightmares, things like that. And this graphic novel series follows him as the main, not really an antagonist, not really a protagonist. He's just a very neutral character in many ways. And it follows his various exploits and the characters he meets. It's from Vertigo, which is, I think, a now defunct DC Comics imprint. I think they kind of rolled it into DC Comics at large now. I could be wrong. But yeah, it was part of Vertigo or DC Comics now. And you will see a lot of characters from the DC comic universe pop up in the Sandman. The Justice League is there. John Constantine is there. Batman is there. So you get a lot of characters and cameos that pop up in the series. So he is most well known for Sandman. It's what catapulted him to fame. There is a Netflix series coming based on the Sandman graphic novel. So can't recommend these enough. I have the first 2 volumes in my library, and it's just a really fun, entertaining read. So yeah, excellent works. The next book I want to talk about is American Gods. And this is another one of Neil Gaiman's very well-known books. It has a lot of gods from different mythologies, mostly Norse myths and things like that, but there's a few other characters from other mythologies that pop up in here. But it comes from the premise of what if the old gods still existed, but have lost some of their power due to people forgetting about them. And so now they're just toying around in modern day, living their lives, trying to cause a little havoc on the side where they can, and just living as normal human beings. In America. It is American Gods. So I really liked this book. It's not my favorite of his books, I will say that, but it was a really fun read. I have not seen the Stars miniseries yet. I'll probably watch it eventually, but they did make a miniseries out of it, so I don't know what to say about that one really, but you can check it out. He did have some involvement with that. So yeah, American Gods is one of his more well-known books, and a really good read. One of my other favorites of his is Norse mythology. Now, Norse mythology isn't necessarily anything new. Neil takes the classic Norse myths that have been translated by various different translators, and he puts his own unique Gaiman spin on those myths. Just a fantastic read. So if you've seen the Marvel movies and you're familiar with Thor and Odin and Loki, they're not anything new. The Norse myths are where they came from, and if you want to read some of the older myths about those characters, this is a great book to check out. One of my favorite stories in here, because it is a book of short stories, one of my favorite stories is The Wedding of Freya. I was rolling on the floor. I was just laughing so hard at some of the antics in that story. And there's plenty of other funny stuff throughout the book, but that one is my absolute favorite. If I had to pick one to read over and over again, it would probably be The Wedding of Freya, because it is just absolutely hilarious. So yeah, make sure you check this out. I was lucky enough to get it when it very first came out, so I've got the original hardback cover, which I just love. There's other cool covers out there too, and you know I love a good cover, but yeah, I have the original that he released, and it's a really great and fun read. So, Norse mythology. Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman is another book of short stories. He has a lot of short story books, by the way. So if you like something that you can just sit down, read a complete story in like 30 minutes or whatever, he writes a lot of short stories like that. This is a fantastic book, and just like the title, you need a trigger warning to read it, because some of the stories in the book are downright creepy and quite unnerving at points. One of my favorite stories in the book is The Truth is a Cave in the Black Mountains. Just a very kind of weird story, but jarring and creepy, and there's a lot of stories like that in here. So I highly recommend this, or really any of his short story books, and I'll share with you a few others here in just a few minutes. But this is really his only book of short stories that I've actually read. I have some of the others, but I have not read them yet. So I'll just briefly talk about those later. But this is really, really good. It's one of my favorite books of his as far as short stories go. So yeah, definitely one to check out. Good Omens. And I'll do a little bit of a more in-depth review on this at some point, because it did have a TV miniseries recently in partnership with Amazon Prime. And this is such a fun story to read. He wrote it with one of his best friends, Terry Pratchett, who is now deceased. And it is widely hailed as one of the best books in science fiction and fantasy as far as satire goes. It is a religious satire. It follows an angel and a demon who have become best friends, and they're trying to stop the end of the world because they don't really want it to end. They're having too much fun. That's the gist of it. And it's crass, it's demeaning to religion, it's everything that's fun in fiction. I loved it. Such a great read. And it's a good showcase of Neil Gaiman's talent in conjunction with another author. So really, really good book. Can't recommend it enough. You should check it out. Fragile Things. This is another book of short stories. I have not read it yet, but it is going to be a book that I will read in the near future. I just have not had a chance to, but yet another one of his short story books. And I also have another of his short story books called Smoke and Mirrors. So those are the other two short story books I was mentioning before. I have not read them, but I eventually will, and I'll let you know and probably do a review on those as well. Neverwhere was the first Neil Gaiman book that I ever read. And oh man, it is so much fun. It's one of his earlier books that he ever wrote, and it's a very famous book. It's got a very Alice in Wonderland feel to it, but instead of Alice in Wonderland, it's Richard in London Below. But it's got the same types of quirky characters that you would expect from an Alice in Wonderland reimagining. It's got all these different worlds and different characters that Richard encounters. It is just hysterical. I found points at this one where I was just laughing uncontrollably. It's so funny. So if you want Alice in Wonderland in a more modern fantasy, urban fantasy setting with a male protagonist, it's really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. So good. Stardust. I have not read the book yet. It's on my TBR list, but I have seen the movie several times. And if you've seen the movie as well, but you've not read the book, maybe you weren't even familiar that Neil Gaiman was the creator of Stardust. Well, he is. And the movie was really good. Compared to the book, I'm sure it won't be nearly as good. I've heard the book is quite different. But yeah, you should check this out, and also check out the movie if you have not already. It's a really fun romp. And yeah, so Stardust is one of his more popular books. Anansi Boys. Anansi Boys follows one particular god from American Gods. So I wouldn't read this book unless you've read American Gods first. And I actually have not gotten around to reading this book yet. It's another Neil Gaiman book that is on my soon-to-be-read list. But it follows Mr. Nancy, who is one of the characters from American Gods. So don't read this before you read American Gods, otherwise it might have spoilers. So, just so you know. The Graveyard Book. I have not read this book yet, which it seems to be a pattern with quite a few of these books. I have not read all of them yet. This is one of them, but it came highly recommended. I read the synopsis and I said, oh, I've just got to have that and read it at some point. And just a really fun little tale about what happens in graveyards, and with a young boy as one of the main characters, is what I understand. So more Neil Gaiman brilliance I am sure to be had in this book. Highly recommend it. You should check it out. And the final one is Unnatural Creatures. Now, these are written by other authors, but it was kind of collected by Neil Gaiman into this book, and he had some oversight and wrote some things for the book as well. So another one I have not read yet, but it's been on my to-read list. And one of the things with Neil Gaiman, he is so prolific, he's written so much, that it takes a while to really read everything that he's written. And even then you probably miss some of the stuff, because Neil Gaiman's claim to fame is, and I'll quote him literally, I make things up and I write them down. That's his claim to fame. He makes it up, he writes it down, and that is why he is so good at pretty much every arena that he tries his craft in, whether it's graphic novels or short fiction or movie scripts. You name it, he's had his hand in a lot of different pots. He's written episodes of Doctor Who. Just really, really prolific. And so, all because he just writes down what he makes up. So, it's really hard to completely read or interact with all of the stuff he's been involved in, because he's had his fingers in so many different pots. So, you really want to look into Neil Gaiman's stuff. The final book that I want to showcase before I talk about a few other things is The View from the Cheap Seats. Now, this is Neil Gaiman's only nonfiction book, and it's a collection of different essays he's written. There's some transcripts of speeches he's given in here. There's sections where he talks about different creators and directors, different artists that he's worked with in the past, different writers that have influenced him deeply. He talks about some of the craft of writing and creating in here. And it's just a really good general overview of his life and his thoughts about the creative process. I highly recommend it if you like nonfiction, quasi-autobiographies of sorts. Then you'll really get a lot out of this book and you'll really like it. I loved it, and some of the writings in here are just amazing, because not only do you get to see what a talented artist Neil is, you also get to see some of the things that he is most passionate about ways to make our world and humanity better. He's got an amazing heart. He's just a really nice, quality guy. And you couldn't ask for more in someone to be your favorite author. And so I'm very happy to claim him as my favorite author, because he's just a stellar human being. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. Let's move on to a few other things that he has been involved with. He was executive producer on the Good Omens project for Amazon Prime. At least I think it was executive producer, or one of them anyway. So you know that that was a quality adaptation because he had his fingers all over it. If you have ever seen the children's cartoon, if you can call it a children's cartoon, and it's not even really a cartoon, it's more like claymation type of stuff, Coraline. If you've ever seen Coraline, that is Neil Gaiman's creation. He apparently, according to a speech that I listened to him give, he miswrote Caroline one time and, transposed the letters and it became Coraline. And he decided, oh, that's a good name for a character. And so she stayed Coraline. Really fantastic movie. I've not read the short story yet, but I really enjoyed the movie. And when you combine the genius of both Neil Gaiman and Tim Burton into one movie, which is what Coraline is, I was just blown away. You can tell I like Tim Burton a little bit too. Yeah, dark, quirky. Yeah, really, really good storyteller and creator. So, Coraline is one of Neil Gaiman's as well. If you've heard of the movie Mirror Mask, that was also a Neil Gaiman creation or collaboration in any case. I have not seen it, but I've heard really good things about it. And if you've seen trailers or pictures of it, it just looks weird and quirky, which you would expect from Neil Gaiman. So, highly recommend you checking those out. Coraline especially is just such a fun movie. One final note that I want to give. If you watch nothing else as your first foray into Neil Gaiman, it needs to be his commencement speech that he gave for an arts university called Make Good Art. It has been viral on YouTube for years, and I would highly recommend you watch it. I've watched it several times. It inspires me, it invigorates me, it brings me to tears. It's just a really, really great speech. And I think you should check it out. And I'll help you out even. I'll put the link below in the description. You can't say no to that. I may even link it at the end of this video if I can figure out how to put it in my end screen. Yeah, it's that good. So make sure you check out Make Good Art. If you want a good introduction into the writing of Neil Gaiman, I'm going to go back to The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Ocean at the End of the Lane, I would highly recommend to be your first book that you read of Neil Gaiman's if you have not read him before. It is short, it's fun, it's a quick read. So if you're just new to Neil Gaiman, this is the book to pick up. And the illustrated edition is really awesome. So why not pick that book up? Just saying. It's really cool, and I would recommend that as your first book to read of his. So let me know in the comments what you thought. Are there some things that I've missed? Some key things that I've missed? Let me know in the comments. Dialogue with me. Have you read some of these books? Did you like them? Did you not like them? What were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. I'd love for you to interact with me there and talk about all things Neil Gaiman. Let me know also, too, if you'd like more author deep dives. What you liked about this particular deep dive, what you didn't like, things you'd like to see more of. Let me know that, too. Remember to make sure and share with your friends so they can see my content and get inspired to read more books. I am close to 100 subscribers, not super close. I'm at 60 subscribers right now. When I get to 100 subscribers, I am going to do a book giveaway. So make sure to share with all your friends and encourage them to subscribe so that the sooner I hit 100, the sooner I can do that book giveaway and they might have a chance at getting in on it. And If you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe as well. If you enjoyed this video, click a like on it, and I would really appreciate that. It helps with the YouTube algorithms, which seem to be weird and crazy and changing all the time, but I think the like still applies for that algorithm, so make sure you click like. And most importantly, as I always say, I really, really hope that you will continue reading more books or start reading more books, and I will talk to you in the next video. Have a great day, guys. Bye.